Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be working on the V6 MR2. But before we get to that, I quickly want to touch on the Skyline. Replacing the head gasket on this car has been delayed by a few weeks, and that's because Jesus got sick. Jesus is feeling a lot better now. Unfortunately, we actually have opposing work schedules, so if we want to do a big project like removing the head on the Skyline, we have to plan it in advance. So hopefully we can get to that in a couple weeks. Now we can get on to the V6 MR2. Pretty much, we're just going to start the process of doing like its annual maintenance on top of all the stuff that I do before each event, just to make sure the car is in good shape. Once a year on each of my cars, I go through and I make sure all the fluids are changed out, and if there's anything else that needs to be addressed, I typically address it at that time too. First thing we're actually going to start out with is the spark plugs. So as I look back at my logbook, I realized I never touched the spark plugs on this car, and it's been 2 years. The car's running okay. It does run a little rough right now, and that honestly comes down to the tune. But just to be safe, I do want to check out the spark plugs. Because this engine has the supercharger on it, I highly doubt that it's going to be like what the OE plugs would be. My guess is they're going to be like a step colder, but we'll see. To take off the plugs, I just unclip this, maybe, and then undo that bolt, and I should easily be able to access the spark plugs. On the front of the engine right there, those would normally be pretty hard to access, but the shop that did the swap ended up cutting a hole in the firewall, which is not ideal, but it does give me good access to the front spark plugs. Well, I got lazy and I decided not to pull the spark plugs that are on the front side of the engine, which is fine because today I was just trying to figure out what plugs were even in there. This plug was on the rear bank, it was on the driver's side, this was on the middle, this plug was on the passenger side. They are pretty filed up, which is honestly no surprise. Well guys, we have another guest. Stitch, the neighbor's cat who likes to, oh, he's angry with me today. Hey Stitch. The neighbor's cat who likes to come hang out. He's chilling in the garage. I think he wants to go inside. He's a good kitty.
We are on to the oil change. Hopefully this stuff doesn't look too bad. Oh, was it really that loose? Oh, okay. Oh, not bad.
Here's a look at the oil. So it's dirty, as one would expect because I've been driving the car, but it's not really bad. What I'm always looking for to see if there's like metallic flakes or if it looks like coolant and oil have been mixing. None of that seems to be the case here. It's just dirty from use. Last thing to do now is just put the oil in. We are halfway done with everything. After the oil change, I do got to change out the belt because it got a cut on it. The other thing is I want to drain and refill the coolant. There are a few other things I got to do as part of like the annual maintenance I do on this, such as replacing the supercharger oil, but that stuff hasn't arrived yet. All right, that should be good. 4 quarts came out and I put a little over 4 quarts in, so we're solid. Taking off the belt on this is pretty easy, luckily. I'm gonna take off the side panel for a little bit more access.
The view may not be the best. Right here,
This pulley, I just have to move it and that's going to release the tension on the belt, and then she should just pop on out. Oh, crap. Oh, God, every time. The reason I'm replacing this belt is because there's a good little slice there. My guess is that a rock came through and got that pretty good, but I'd rather fix it now than be stranded on the road later. Although I guess I wouldn't necessarily be stranded since I do trailer this to events. I would more realistically be stuck not driving. So yeah, I don't want that. Also, if you are curious what belt this is because you're doing a similar setup, I'm using a Dayco 5060 775. Works for me. I only run an alternator. I don't run power steering or AC or anything like that. Almost there. Almost there. I just have to get this properly aligned. I just have to bring it over a couple ridges or whatever these are called. Grooves, I think that's the better way to put it.
perfect.
Well, what kind of sucks about the whole belt situation is that that little cut ruined it. And the reason that sucks is that if you flip it over, it's actually in really good shape. And in the 2 years I've had this car, this is now my third belt. The issue that I'm running into is that because this belt is right there in front of that side vent, you know, rocks and stuff like that are getting sucked in and it's hitting the belt. I had plans to put like some chicken wire in there because that would still allow airflow, but it would hopefully not let rocks in. I got lazy though. I got very, very lazy. All I can say is that I will do it eventually. We are moving on to the last thing. I got a little bucket here so that we can just drain and refill the coolant. Once this is done draining, we will fill her back up. Well, the coolant is still draining. The coolant capacity is actually a lot, surprisingly. I think it's like 3.5 gallons or something like that. For me though, it's a little bit less because the heater core is bypassed. So when I start bleeding it, I don't have to worry about this. I just have to worry about this right here. And then I got the back end up higher. So that's gonna make my life a little bit easier when I bleed the coolant here in a sec. When you fill up the coolant system, you typically wanna use coolant, but as you can see, I'm actually just using pure water. Over the next few days, I plan on draining it and refilling it until I'm happy with how clean the fluid is. At that point, I'll just put in a mix of 50% coolant and 50% water. Now that the radiator was filled up, I turned on the car. I made sure that the valve was open on the radiator at the front, and then I started squishing the radiator hoses where I could and revving the engine up. That really helps get the air bubbles out. MR2s have a bit of a rough reputation for bleeding out the cooling system, but they're not really that bad. Well, I bled out all the coolant, so I do think she's good to go for the most part. I still have to change out the transmission fluid another day and the supercharger oil. And then in a couple of days, I'm going to come through and actually change out the coolant again. I'd like to do it a few times at the minimum to try to get as much of like debris that could be in the system out as possible. Also at that time, I do plan on doing the thermostat because the car is due to have that changed out as well. But I think with all of that stuff, it should be good enough for about the next year, year and a half, so I can finally start the teardown process on this car. Well, that's gonna do it for this video. So thank you for watching, everyone, and I'll see you guys in the next one.